Hello, welcome back to the Starting Story podcast with me, Krishna Palmer. Here, I talk to guests all across the world about how they got started in business and their take on life, growth, and everything in between. Today, my guest is Dan Johnson, who works in the non-profit sector in the US. He's known for his work in helping non-profits reach new heights in terms of fundraising, organizational development, and impact. He focuses a lot on sustainability, and he has a framework called the 5 Levels of Sustainability Framework. His expertise lies in guiding nonprofits towards sustainability, growth, and effectiveness in fulfilling their missions. I look forward to talking about how Dan applies his logic in a time where business seems so volatile. Join me as I talk to Dan about his starting story. Dan, thank you so much for coming on to the Starting Story podcast with me today. It means a lot. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. I've had some doing this kind of work with nonprofits is always incredible because you have such interesting conversations with people. Just yesterday I was talking with a woman who had been through some serious personal trauma in Puerto Rico, actually a sexual assault in Puerto Rico. And in Puerto Rico, there are about 995 out of every 1,000 perpetrators walks free of sexual
Whoa.
assault specifically. And she's working to change that. She's created a Victims' Bill of Rights. She's been working with research institutes to figure out just how bad the situation is. They just landed on the front page of the newspaper in their region in Puerto Rico. So, talking to nonprofits like that and helping them leverage that into funding, into being successful, it's the kind of thing I love to do. So I am on the situation's awful there, but I live and breathe change makers, people who are going out and making a difference. So being able to have those conversations is just really, really good for my mood.
Wow. Okay. What an intro. I kind of agree with that because uh, you'd almost assume that someone who's doing a nonprofit, it's entirely a passion project because a nonprofit, by the nature of it, you're not doing it for the money. Obviously, the money you do make goes back into it. So it's all about kind of something you're reaching into people's heart and what they want to do, right?
Kind of. Successful nonprofits are separate from nonprofits. So if you think about your average nonprofit is a passion project. So somebody sees a challenge in their life, or somebody sees something in their community they want to do something about, and they start working on it. I have a passion project that I'm working on now, just as a side thing. But it becomes a real nonprofit when they pick a specific problem that they want to solve. And that's what separates nonprofits from for-profits. For-profits solve a problem brought to them by their audience, and they're primarily focused on making money. So at the end of the day, what you're looking for is profit. And there's nothing wrong with that because you're making money from people who can afford it, who can afford to pay you, and everybody benefits and everybody wins. But with nonprofits, you have a group of people who have problems who cannot afford to pay for these problems. And so you have to pick one of those problems to tackle as a nonprofit. And really, until you've done that, you're a passion project. Once you've decided this is the problem we're going to solve, this is what it's going to look like when we do, now you're a nonprofit. We can start treating you like that.
And that must be difficult for some people because, like you said, for that lady trying to kind of combat such a big, systemic problem in Puerto Rico, for her, obviously, things like domestic violence and abuse and trauma, it's just a massive umbrella term. So where do you even start? So part of your job in advising these people must be really trying to help them break it down into one thing because of course if it's a passion project you want to do everything all at once, which as you said yourself is not possible if you want to be sustainable. So how do you go about kind of breaking that down for people?
I've tried many different ways, and I don't know that outside of my company there is a specific way that people have figured out how to do this. But what we found through trial and error is you just listen to their story over and over and over and over and over again, and then you have them rank what problems come out of that story, and then you listen to their story again, and they listen to their story again. The problem is hidden in the foundational story of that organization. So let me give you an example. I'm working with a woman who is actually working on a domestic violence nonprofit right now. She was abused by her stepfather growing up, and she really didn't understand why her mother stayed. But 25 years later, when she was working on the domestic violence hotline, she had a survivor call in, and it was someone she'd been working with for a couple of months. She had the survivor call in, and this woman asked her an incredible question.
Right.
Can I go back? The woman explained that she had been in the shelter for the 60 days. There was nowhere else for her to go. The job that they'd gotten her was not going to provide permanent housing for her. Can she go back? She just wanted permission from the person on the hotline to go back to her abuser. And that is a powerful moment where you realize that the resources aren't enough here.
Yeah.
And, you know, we went through, what do you think your top problems are that you want to solve? And she's like, well, lack of housing for these people, lack of employment for these individuals. And I listened to her story again, and I said, what if the problem you want to solve is that victims of domestic violence go back to their abuser? That if you could, in looking at, you know, nonprofits, when they become a nonprofit, it's a legacy project. This is something, it better be a legacy project, because our social problems are not easy to move. So it's a legacy project. And if you're looking at what is your legacy 20, 30, 40, 100 years from now with this organization, you only get to solve one problem. Does it make you feel like you did what you needed to if survivors are still going back to their abuser, but they have housing? They're going back to their abuser, but they have a job. They're going back to their abuser, but they have temporary shelter. Is that good enough for you? And in some cases, it might be. But in her case, it wasn't. And the answer was because that the problem they solved was domestic violence survivors going back to their abuser. And it's an insane number. It's like 70-something% of domestic violence survivors go back to their abuser. And when they go back, they either don't leave again because of how badly they're treated because of how they left, or that person ignores what happened and just continues treating them the same way that they were. And listening to her story over and over again, and if you have audience, you know, listening to this, listening to your own story about why you started this, or, you know, this passion project, what is that problem? It's as simple as that. If you can solve one thing in 30, 40, 50, 100 years, and you can look back and say, I did that, what do you define that as? That is the best way that we've found to pull out that problem and turn it from a passion project into a nonprofit.
And is that a process people can do on their own as well, I suppose? Because, you know, we're talking about here about someone trying to solve a problem for someone else, right? But for many people, they might be trying to solve a problem for themselves, you know, people trying to grow and, you know, improve themselves. And the same thing kind of applies where people are going, well, I have bad habits, but then I also have bad friends, but then also I make bad decisions. And then, you know, sometimes I drink and you sometimes fall for a smoke sometimes. There's so many problems. And again, the same problem can occur when people are like, if I just try to improve everything at once, they don't manage that and they feel like they're failing. So could that process almost be iterated on a personal level where you could maybe reiterate to yourself what your problems are over and over and over again and try to get to the bottom line of, right, what is the one thing or the biggest thing that if I can solve or start solving will have the biggest impact on my life?
Yeah, I think it's certainly valuable for someone who is in a personal situation to identify what is the problem they want to solve in their life, right? So let's step back from the immediate for a second. You can't get anywhere if you just work on the immediate and you don't know where you're going. So you think about, well, what is the problem that I want to solve in my life? Or what are the top problems that I want to solve in my life? Pick, you know, humans are not nonprofits. Humans are multifaceted. There's a lot of things going on. But if you're like, oh, well, I really want to contribute to ethical AI. That is really, I see that as a big issue. I want to, you know, contribute to that. I really want to make sure my wife's is, I really want to solve the problem of unwanted children. That children are born into families and then they're not wanted and they're not accepted in those families. Come up with 3 or 4 of those, because you have a life and you can have options. Come up with 3 or 4 of those, but then you adopt the second piece of our sustainability setup, which is your first project. So you identify which problem is and where you're going. And then you're like, where do I start? And from a nonprofit standpoint, what I always tell them is start as small as you can. In fact, James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, has a 2-minute rule that I have used to great success. In fact, I sent out an email on this 3 or 4 weeks ago. I, sitting in front of you, although I am a skinny white guy, I have now, for the first time in my life, worked out for nearly 7 months straight.
Nice.
And every single weekday. And that is only because now I failed at this numerous times. I used to joke with people that as much as I might want to work out, I would always end up just running. And that running away from my problems was my favorite pastime. And I would stop and start. I would, do high intensity training or whatever. And I'd stop and I'd do this and I'd stop and I'd do this and I'd stop. And I adopted James Clear's 2-minute rule, which is you do not start a habit that takes that is an ongoing thing. You can do one-time tasks or whatever, but as an ongoing thing, you do not start a habit that takes any longer than 2 minutes at its first iteration. So my first iteration of working on my to-do list every week was open the to-do list app. That's it. Not write anything, not put anything down, open the to-do list app. I'd identified that my ability to be productive was somewhat determined by my ability to keep all my tasks straight. So I identified the mini problem that I wanted to solve. And then I put my first step forward, which was I'm going to open the to-do list app. And I'm going to be happy with opening the app for like several days. And that's it. And I did that. And I slowly started to build a habit. And I did that with working out. My first workouts were 2 minutes or less. And some days, I don't know if this is a video podcast or not, but some days my workouts kind of were like this. I swear to God, it was just like moving my finger up and down like a snake. But that progressed, and then it was 10 minutes, and now it's 15 minutes working out every single day. And that kind of thing is doable in your personal life if you identify not only where you're going, so the problem you're solving, so to speak, not only where you're going, but also what is the one thing that I can do now, and how do I put 2 minutes into it? The same way I tell a nonprofit, don't go raise $1 million, or £1 million in your case. Don't go raise £1 million. Don't go raise 500,000 pounds. Don't go raise 20,000 pounds. Go raise 10,000, 5,000 pounds and succeed, and then build on that first project. If you as a person in your business or in your life, build on that first project, pick that first little thing and put 2 minutes in, and put it 2 minutes in for one day and see how you feel. And then put 2 minutes in for the next day, and then put 2 minutes in for the next day.
Wow. So you kind of give me the vibes of someone who very much likes to learn by doing. And I agree. I'm very much like that as well. I read the the James Clear book, Atomic Habits, and there's just so many things, right? There's another one I like, which is the 5-minute one, which is if you're going to sit down, if you have a big thing you need to get done and you really don't want to get it done, just sit down and start doing it for 5 minutes. And if you really don't like to do it after 5 minutes, then sure, quit. But most often than not, once you're 5 minutes in, you'll just continue and you just get the job done. I like that one as well. There'll be so many times I'll be sitting there going, oh, you know what, I just put Netflix on, I just can't be bothered. But I tell myself, sure, I'll give myself 5 minutes, and before you know it, before dinner I've got my work done, and I can always watch Netflix after dinner, right? So yeah, there's so many little tidbits of information in there, but it all requires you to have this element of doing, right, where you in your mind that I need to take action regardless, even if the action is futile, even if the action is really low quality, at least it's a step in the right direction. So how do you kind of, from your end, contrast that with things like non-profits and business, where planning is also required? You can't always just go in completely blind and just start taking steps, because you might go down the wrong hole, speak to the wrong people, waste money in some instances, unfortunately. How do you balance that side of taking action with the side of actually plan and go through what you're going to do before you take the action?
So I think most people know when a plan is about 90% done. So you because the goal of a plan is to create a roadmap, right? So just like my roadmap for sustainability for nonprofits is you have your vision, you have your team, you have your funding, you have your impact, you have your marketing, right? That's a 5-piece roadmap you get from here to there. when you're creating a plan for your business or creating a plan for your life, you're putting together a roadmap. How do I get from point A to point B? And in putting together that roadmap, you only need to know like what you can access at the time. So if you have a friend you can talk to, an advisor you can talk to, whatever, you get a feel for what do I do along this roadmap. And once it's about 90% done, and you'll get when you start going back and like editing things, right? So you're like, I've got my roadmap. I'm not, okay, start business question marks profit. It's start business. And then this is my target audience and this is who I reach out to and et cetera, right? You have a little bit of an idea. There are business plans all over the internet. If you're starting a nonprofit, I have a nonprofit launch plan, talk to me. But that when you have that together and you start going back and you're like, well, maybe instead of Instagram, I'll reach them on Facebook and maybe, and this, just stop. Go and execute the first step of that plan now. When I put together my sustainability school, which was my group coaching program, because I saw that in my business, there were lots of people who couldn't afford my main high ticket programs. So I wanted to put together a group coaching program. And I made the promises a little big in the group coaching program. So it was like, I distinctly remember saying that there was going to be 8 hours of video content, like courses and stuff like that they could access. And I was really nervous about putting it out because like, did I get their needs correct? Are they going to go for this? And with a pit in my stomach, I launched it on my convening, and several people bought in that day. Several more people bought in later. And I spent the next several weeks creating the promised 8 hours of video content. And I didn't actually need to. Hardly any of that got used. So like 2 weeks of my life in early January, completely gone. Sometimes that gets used, but the important thing is I just did it. And I probably could have done it smaller and not have the video content and stuff like that. People would have been fine with it. So I could adjust that for next time. But when I put that together, I got enough of an idea of what I wanted to do. And then I just did a crappy version of it. And I learned a ton from doing that crappy version. Do faster crappy versions that don't take 2 weeks. But if I hadn't put it out there, then I wouldn't have been able to develop my middle ticket program that I developed recently. So it was like $1,000 program. I wouldn't have been able to develop. I came up with on the fly, talking to a customer. Again, why you have to do it. On the fly, talking to a prospect. He's like, oh yeah, I can't do this program. You have to go through my board or whatever. And I was like, I'll offer you a strategy call. How about I do a strategy call where we fix one of these problems with your sponsorship program with your board?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, we could do that. And then they eventually just went for the whole thing. But I found those strategy calls to be a key part of what I did from there, and would never have learned it if I didn't just go out and put out crap. And if you're someone listening to this podcast who has a tendency to put a lot of things together in your head and like make sure it's really, really good before you just stop, because you might come to the conclusion that it's really, really good and your conclusion might suck. So you need to get it out there and get it out in front of people basically as soon as you possibly can. Trust me, people are a lot more forgiving than you think.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think it's the other case of something that you think is a problem might actually not be a problem for other people. So you can go out and create something which you're like, oh, if this was me, I'd really buy this. But other people might just not need that. And that's the whole case of where the MVP term comes in, right? Like create the minimum viable product. The thing that's basically the skeleton of what you plan to make. Just put it out there. And people will then tell you what they want on that skeleton rather than you making the entire human body and people are not liking it.
And something that's been really helpful to me is I've adopted a follow-up mindset. So the data shows that 85% of people will not buy in the first 90 days, but then they will buy after the first 90 days. So instead of taking it of a mindset of, I either sell that, I have a family to take care of. So you add additional financial pressure in that case. If you're a young buck who doesn't have a family yet, put your heart into it. But you have additional financial pressure in this kind of case. And a big way, part of the way I got rid of that was by adopting a follow-up mindset. Even if they don't buy this from me, they might buy something else. Even if they don't buy this from me now, they might buy this from me later. And by having a follow-up mindset and putting in a follow-up system, I'm regularly communicating with people even after they reject my initial offer, which builds a lot of confidence, because when you're in those conversations and you're in these sales calls and people are telling you, yeah, I want that thing, and then they don't do it, and they don't follow up, and they don't pay the invoice, and they don't, you start to get into a state where you're like, are people real? Do they just say things to me, or is this something they actually want to do? And having a follow-up system where you reach out to them and you see I call people immediately after I send an offer. So I'll send an offer on on Monday, and then I'll call them on Tuesday and see if they got it and see what they thought. And man, that alone probably has increased my sales for my company, probably 10-15%. Because now, if they're interested, I know, and B, if they're not interested, I know why. So adopting that follow-up mindset of just consistently keeping in touch with people, realizing that there's a group of people you want to help and something you want to solve for them, and just regularly keeping in touch with those people over and over and over again really helps to eliminate that I don't want to try it mindset, because this is my last chance to get in front of people. It's not your last chance to get in front of people. It's your first chance. Try it.
Wow. And when I was going through your kind of a little bit about you, there's the thing which I mentioned before, which was the 5 levels of sustainability. Now, before you even talk about that, I just want to kind of premise, like, for you to be able to summarize something into 5 levels, it must have taken a decent amount of thinking, because sustainability, and to be honest, anything in business, and more so as I've been speaking to people on this podcast, it's just such a wide term where people can sometimes wander off in business, and with their ideas, they can wander off, they can follow their own trajectory, and it can be really hard to summarize things into something that is very transferable, right? So do you want to talk a bit more about what these 5 levels are, and give us a rough kind of guideline of not only what these levels are, but then why are they so powerful? How do they help nonprofits?
Yeah, so I would slightly modify your assertion. It did take a lot of thinking, but it actually took a ton of doing.
Okay.
So not only, so I had 10 years of nonprofit experience before I started my firm. I had started 4 of my own nonprofits, had tens of thousands of volunteers, raised several million. But just because I'd done it 4 times, the key number for any study is you got to have a minimum of 32 people in it. Otherwise, it's not a valid study. So just because I'd done it 4 times doesn't mean I know what I was doing. And so it took over and over again launching a client and then not doing a good enough job for them and being like, why didn't that work? What part failed along this process that made them burn out or no longer care about the organization or lose their team or whatever. And throughout that process, I think the most stunning point of that process for us was we went vision, and we initially had the 5 steps as 4. We had vision, funding, impact, marketing. And what I think stunned us about using that model with the clients we worked with was we noticed a key piece that was missing, which was the team. That over and over again, we would work with an excited founder. They would get going, and they wouldn't have people around them who believed in what they were doing. And so they would lose interest. They would flame out. They would whatever. And we realized that when you're building a nonprofit, not only are you solving a problem, but you also now need to bring a team with you. When it's a passion project, it can be just you writing blogs or doing videos or even going out and doing community service work. But when you bring in a nonprofit, you have to bring in people. And so I think that the levels were hard fought lessons of nonprofits not going as far as we thought they could, and identifying what was in there that stopped them. And that's how we ended up coming up with the 5 levels.
Right. Okay. That's a good point, isn't it? Team and community in general. When you're a founder, or as I've spoken to other people on the podcast, when you're kind of someone who's trying to do something differently, inevitably you'll have people, the haters, the people who, either people who directly just hate what you're doing like, out of jealousy or whatever it is. But then you'll also have people who don't always support you. So they'll just be like, you do that, I'll just distance myself a little bit because that's a bit risky maybe, or there's money involved, or I'm not exactly sure what's going on over there. So it can be difficult to find the one person who really understands what you're doing and why you're doing it, especially if something like a non-profit is for maybe a personal kind of, like a personal project. It's a personal mission that you're trying to solve, right? Having someone else who is invested in that same level as you can be difficult. Sometimes people just aren't invested to the same amount. So, how does someone go about finding that person? Because of course you could go about, business people always go to like networking meetings trying to find that one person who could understand them, but I feel like that's a very time consuming way of doing, going about it. And I feel like that's also, it's quite an unreliable method. You're not going to guarantee results. You could go to so many meetings but you still might not find the person. So is there any way that you suggest is more reliable and more trustworthy, and has a higher chance of getting someone who could understand them and help them in business?
So I'd start by stop trying to find the person. There's no the person for you have one the person, and science would argue that might not even be the case. But you have one the person, and that is your romantic or your relationship partner. Outside of that, there is no the person. What there are people with different skill sets and different sets of knowledge who can help you with your company. This might be really valuable for profit as well as nonprofit. One of the key things that I advise a nonprofit to do is build up their advisory board. So if you're looking to start something, you start putting yourself in rooms, it could be the meetings you're going to. You start putting yourself in rooms, you start talking to people who you think will give you good advice, whether it's the issue you're working on, whether that's homelessness, or I suppose in the tech space, that's like AI. Was the issue you're working on, or it's the kind of organization that you're setting up, or it's the specific timing of the organization that someone who's really an expert in, like what your stage is. But you start looking for people in nonprofits. We split them among 3. So you look for people who are experts in your clients, the people you are looking to serve. You look for people who are experts in your community, so the people around you, the target market, whatever, of your donors. And you look for people who are experts in the business operations of what you're doing. And you start learning about these people, and you start talking to these people about your idea. You can go to business meetings. They're a great thing. I always recommend Alignable. This is a social network for business owners, and I'm always, as a millennial, very skeptical of any new social networks, but Alignable speed date connects business owners with each other who have similar interests, and I found it to be really, really valuable. So Alignable is a great place to go, meet people, see people who are interested in you, and then you have like in their Smart Connect thing, you have like 7 minutes with another business owner or another business person in the space, and you can talk with them instead of going to an event and maybe meeting one person. So that's really cool.
Nice.
But you look to build up this group of people who are interested in your idea, and you ask nothing of them other than advice. And what that will do is that will start to build you up a group of mentors effectively for your business. Anybody who has been successful, well, not everybody has been successful, but most people who've been successful know how freaking hard it was, and are happy to give advice to anyone who is going through an earlier stage. So you find those 5, 6, 7 people, and now you've got a small community. And nobody is required to do any. Is the lowest ask you could possibly offer, other than liking your Facebook page, which is useless. It is a community around you that you've now formed that you can ping ideas off of, that you can go back and forth with. Now business is not a lonely venture. Now business is a team. And what does that old African proverb say? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
Now you have it together that you don't have to pay for employees, and you don't have to have partners or anything like that active in your business. You just have a community around you, and at the base level, that's what you need.
Yeah, that's so true. And it just goes back to what I was saying about having those people that you can go to who understand you and are there to support you, but then also you can ping ideas with. Um, and especially how we were talking before about you yourself might not know exactly what other people need, and you can almost be blind-eyed and go into it that way. But if you've got a community of people around you, or just a group of like thinkers, but at the same time you almost sometimes want different thinkers, to then go through and mingle with what you're trying to do, and they can just give you a couple of ideas which you can maybe use to make your offer that much more interesting. So talking about your offer and kind of the product you're releasing or the service or kind of the mission statement, what you're trying to do really as a nonprofit, how do you get that attention? How do you make sure that the people who, the people who need that help are going to get it and they know about it, but then B, the people who can fund it and maybe give you some money to run it as well know about it and are interested enough that they feel like it's the right thing for them to put their money into?
So in my experience, nonprofit, anyone who goes out, most people, not everyone, but most people who go out and take it from a passion project to a nonprofit, they have enough experience in delivering the service that they can understand what people need and what's going to make an impact on people. And they may, and if they haven't, they should have done a little bit of market research on what is already out there, so they know how their offering is going to be different and the results they expect to get. In most cases, I don't think people start a nonprofit, and particularly a nonprofit, but maybe this also applies to business. I don't think people usually start something where they're like, guess what I have no idea how to do? Make sunglasses. Guess what I'm going to do? Make sunglasses.
Yeah.
Like, it happens more in for-profits because of that profit incentive, but like it just doesn't happen all that often. So I generally trust the people I'm working with to know what they're doing on, or at least know what they're doing enough on the people they're working with. It's the funder side that they usually struggle with. And this is because as a nonprofit, you have to sell two things. You have to sell the organization and you have to sell the product. If I'm working with you as a for-profit, I don't have to sell my company. I just have to be like, we're ethical. And then we move on from there. If you want to buy my product, you might develop an affinity for the company. You might like the company. You might even want to wear our hats. But you don't have to care about the company. You just care about what did the product or service do for me. But in nonprofits, people do actually want to know about the company because you're not approaching customers, you're approaching investors. And investors want to know this is something that their money is going to be used well. So the first thing you have to do as a nonprofit is to create your perfect donor pitch. So you have to explain, here is why the problem we're tackling needs to be solved right now. Here is what our vision is for the future. And here is our unique way that we plan on solving this problem. And then you lay in front of them the first project. So I don't know what to compare this to on the business side, but on the nonprofit side, what we call an impact project, which is you look at this very big mission that you want to accomplish, and you create a project that is going to be able to be carried out in 90 days or less, cost 15 grand or less, and will make a meaningful impact on the people that you serve. And if that means you help two people, that means you help two people. It doesn't matter, but you need a project that is at a level people believe you can actually accomplish. And when you're new, 15 is about as high as you get, unless you already have wealthy friends, in which case you're not talking to me. 15 is about as high as you get. So creating that first project, and then the number one thing that drives donations to a nonprofit, and somewhat similar to a business, the number one thing for a business, or a big thing for a business, is testimonials and case studies and proof, right? Nothing sells success like success. Same thing in nonprofits. Have you made an impact yet? And what the impact project does is, instead of it taking a year or a year and a half or 2 years or 3 years for you to figure out how to make an impact on people, because you're dragging your feet trying to talk to whatever donor and get some funding for it, and trying to help people with a problem that requires 14 years of mental counseling and all that jazz. You picked something small, you delivered an impact in 90 days. Everybody's thrilled. Now, the momentum is there. People are like, on board, let's do this thing. Where do I put my money next? I think it's the same with business. If you're able to get out there, I was always bad at this, but I can tell you how to do it. If you're able to get out there and like offer your product for free or whatever and get a good testimonial out of it and all that stuff, then that's the best proof you can provide for getting new people on board. And so that is what I encourage a business or a nonprofit to get out and do. Get out, make that impact, help that customer, do that, learn what you're doing in the process, and get a testimonial out of it. Get a case study out of that. You walk in and you say, hey, I'm a grant writer and I like to write grants. I'd love to write for your organization. That's cool. You walk in and say, hey, I'm a grant writer. I've gotten $1 million in grants specifically for organizations like yours. Would you like me to write grants for your organization? Those two are very different those two pitches hit very different. And the only difference is one of them's done the work.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, this kind of everything you've spoken about it's all about take the action, right? All the way from the beginning, you were talking about, do that 2 minutes, start off doing something, do the smallest step possible. Even when you're doing research, like that market research, which is necessary to start a business. As soon as you've kind of got to that 90%, start working on that first stage and just start to create that first product, see what feedback is you get, right? And bounce off that feedback, change, iterate, and make things better. And then even at this point, you're talking about how, even if you're trying to attract money, do stuff. Do that first big project, like you said, the impact project, the one that's going to raise eyebrows, make people interested. They're going to be like, something's going on here, which is different. Get people interested via doing, rather than telling people, can you invest in my business? Here's a 100-page business proposal. Rather than if you say, hey, can you invest in my business? This is all the stuff we've already done. This is stuff we want to get doing. This is our business, how we've structured it. Your money will be used well. Which is so true. Like, having something material in hand to show to someone, both if you're a non-profit and profit, I suppose, is going to get that investment way more than just having a piece of paper of your brain down on it. So I wanted to ask you, just for kind of clarification and your kind of viewpoint on it, in everything you've described, where would you say the differences lie then between a non-profit and a for-profit? Because everything you say seems to be, in the vast majority, transferable and usable in both scenarios. But is there any position where you'd go, no, this is a hard cutoff, and actually this is not transferable at all?
Yeah, so there's two particular things that make nonprofits fundamentally different, and they kind of like spread out through how the organizations work.
Yeah.
So the first fundamental thing is that nonprofits are designed to solve a problem, whereas for-profits are ultimately designed to make money. If you talked to 100 business owners and you were like, hey, if you could make all the money that you needed without solving anyone's problems, would you do that? Like 70 out of 100 would probably say yes. Some people get a very, benefit out of the problem, but literally most people are lazy and be like, totally, 100%, just give me the money. But nonprofits are designed to solve a problem. And so that focus is very different between the two organizations. And the priorities then become much more about what solves the problem for the nonprofit. And the priorities for the business are like, hey, we'll drop solving that problem if what's going to make us a profit is solving this one over here. Right? You pivot a lot more as a for-profit than you do as a nonprofit in where you're going, because it matters a little bit less. So that's the first difference. The second difference is the clientele. So when you are a for-profit, you are serving people who can pay for what you offer. And therefore, you don't need to create a vision, at least not until you are starting to bring team members on board. Nobody cares. It's like, can you fix my problem? Yes, here's money. No, I will not give you money. It's very straightforward. But when you are a nonprofit, you are serving people who, in the sweet spot for nonprofits is serving people who do not have the money to solve that problem for themselves. And therefore, you're not going to them for money. You're going to donors. You're going to investors. You look a lot more like a tech startup than you do a standard service-based or product-based business. And then the third thing is legal guardrails. So nonprofits, the most probably behind fundraising, the second most complained about part of nonprofits is the board, because nonprofits, at least in the US and probably in the UK, are required to have at least 3 board members. So they're required by law to be inefficient from day one.
Okay.
And you usually have board members who are not as involved. For-profits have boards too, but the board members have shares in the organization, and therefore they have a financial incentive to keep it going. Board members of nonprofits have no such thing. And so you have that legal restriction. You have other legal restrictions on like lobbying and speech. So you have legal structures in nonprofits that don't benefit you, and you have to figure out ways to work around. I would say those are the 3 big differences between nonprofits: the purpose, the target audience that they serve, and the legal restrictions. That if you just lean into those legal restrictions, people say things to justify the board, like, oh, well, the community runs your organization. Oh, really? Does it feel like the community runs your nonprofit? Is the community knocking on your door, volunteering and doing all of the work? No, you are. And if you run your nonprofit like the community is doing all of the work, then the community will run your nonprofit into the ground. So I would say, in my experience, those 3 fundamental pieces and mindsets and all the pieces that come with it are what separates nonprofits from for-profits. And the first 2 is what makes it really hard for a for-profit professional to transition to a nonprofit, because they're so used to talking to people with the money and for people defining their problems for them, as opposed to coming up with the problem, coming up with the vision themselves, and going and talking to investors. And that shift between those 2 really, really makes it hard for some business owners to transition. And that is why I typically work with business owners. They care about their product, they care about their service, but they just can't make that shift to nonprofits really well. And if they can flip that switch and make that shift and apply their skill sets, their nonprofit can really increase the impact that their business is making in the community.
Right. Well, I'm glad you clarified that, because I've spoken to other guests as well where they've said they started a non-profit. And whilst I had a basic understanding of what it is, I really didn't understand the differences between them. And I was like, well, there must be, because otherwise why would someone choose one or the other? But yeah, like talking about the fact that obviously one is money related. So of course, a lot of the conversation, even like the meetings you have with the stakeholders or the people on your board, there will be this element of like, where's the money in this? Like, where's the money in this? And especially if you've got 2 options, one might be the ethically right option. Well, they'll both be ethically right, but one might be more right, one might be not so right. But if one makes more money, you'll lean towards that, because ultimately you need to make that profit. Whereas of course with the non-profit, you lean towards the thing that solves the aim you went for initially, the mission you started off with, right? So whilst that clarifies, I want to kind of again gauge, why do you think that if someone does have a really solid mission, something which is a really good aim where they can get people involved, why do they not still go for a profit? Why can you not have a strong mission, like a non-profit typically does, but still aim for profits and use that for something else? Why do people end up going into the non-profit route?
Because thanks to the beauty of capitalism, we have broadly solved a lot of the problems if you have money to pay for it. Right? Okay. Like in the United States, I don't know about the UK, but in the United States, you can buy a hitman online. Like you can get rid of pretty much all your problems if you have enough money.
Yeah.
The only things we haven't solved is space, which we're working on, and AI and nanotech. Basically, like we have solved the majority of challenges that people have, at least some of the basic ones that people are concerned about. As long as you have money, you got it, especially in the Western world. It is those people who don't have the money to solve that problem that are being left behind. And if you want to go societally broad, what we typically do is we look to our original institution, we look to the government, and we're like, hey, these people are being left behind, you go solve this. But that's not what government's good at.
Yeah.
Government's good at here's a set of rules. We're the biggest, baddest entity in the country. We're going to enforce those rules.
Yeah.
But like walking up to people who don't have enough money for food with rules kind of looks like in the US, school lunch programs are required to have people drink milk because the milk industry funds the USDA here. So they have to, as a nonprofit or as a school lunch program, provide milk with every single meal. So what
Yeah.
does that mean? That means millions of gallons of milk get dumped into the trash that don't need to be because of that rule.
Yeah.
Government is very good at creating rules and enforcing the rules, but very bad at helping people because it comes primarily from a place of enforcement as opposed to a place of compassion. Nonprofits come from a place of compassion, and therefore it's very much about what will get the people from where they are now to where they need to be. And if you look at I don't know about the UK, but if you look at the United States, the biggest issues we fight tooth and nail about in the United States are issues that nonprofits can solve. They are the lack of affordable healthcare. They are the homelessness challenge. They are people not being able to afford groceries at the grocery store. Like, these are challenges that nonprofits can solve, but government is being put in its place, and government's not good at it. So if I'm looking at why would you start a nonprofit, it's because you see a group of people who cannot afford the solution that will get them out of their problem, and you still want them to be helped. You still want there to be someone for them instead of society just going, yeah, I guess you guys get left behind. You guys didn't keep up, so that's about it.
Yeah.
Like if people were asking me, I've been asked this before, what is the new emerging area in nonprofits that if somebody was starting a nonprofit, they should start one in, and it's AI. Because whenever there's a big advance like this, there's a group of people left behind. There's
Yeah.
a crap ton of money made by that advance, so you have a ready pool of donors, and there's a group of people left behind by that. And nonprofits work with that group of people who are left behind and enable them to catch up. So if you're looking to start a nonprofit, follow the AI, follow who AI is leaving behind, and empower people to get behind that, or whatever tech advance or societal advance you're seeing. Bring up that vanguard, because as nonprofits, we make sure no one gets left behind, and the for-profit industry carves space so there is a path forward. And those two work really well together. I just happen to be really passionate about the nonprofit side because those are the people we're screwing over right now.
Wow, okay. So what a good summary that was. And it clearly explains why you're so passionate about helping this, because it's so much more of a mission statement behind that. When money's not involved, everyone's true aims comes out. And you trying to link the fact that you need the for-profits. Like, you weren't there going directly like, oh well, for-profit is terrible, it's all about money, it's awful, this, and they're just so they're full of themselves. You were there like, we need them to create the path, we need them to continuously innovate, because innovation requires massive amounts of money. Like, there's of course AI is going to be raising billions and billions because you need that much money to innovate and just forge through difficult barriers. But then the non-profit is there to make sure no one gets left behind. And I think it's a difference between like equality and equity, right? I didn't really understand the meaning between those two words until very recently, where equality is making sure that everyone gets the same thing, but equity is making sure that the people who need something get that thing. And like you're comparing to the government is very much on equality basis. Like, we'll just give everyone something. Like, we'll get everyone milk cartons. Like, someone said we need milk, everyone gets milk. But equity is there going, okay, who actually needs this? Who actually is suffering because of AI, because of health, because of homelessness, because of addiction? How can we help those people that need it more, rather than just a widespread problem being solved? Which is a very good way of describing it, I think. So what kind of you already ran a couple of nonprofits, right? Before doing all of this, you said for 4 years you'd run a couple of them, made them successful, of course. And then you realize that there's other people who need help. Okay, how did you initially go about helping others? Because there's so many people that I've spoken to where they've said, rightly so, that once you've got a certain element of understanding and expertise in a field, sharing it and disseminating it is a very noble thing to do, because you're helping people who, again, will take so many years to learn the same amount of information. But packaging that in a way that people understand can be like it can come in so many different forms. Some people go to social media, some people create courses, some people make newsletters, and some people do like in-person things, conferences. It's widespread. What kind of thing reached out to you as being the right medium for sharing what you already had to help other people?
So I think that all of those things that you mentioned are good things to do in one of two cases. Either you don't know anybody, or B, you're already pretty far along.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what I did and the advice that I would give to any business owner who is getting started. So I'll paint the scenario for you. A couple years ago, I come to a head with my nonprofit leadership at the organization I'm running a department for, and we disagreed on the vision. This is why vision is first in everything we do, because their mission was clear, like what they did, but their vision wasn't clear where they were going. And so half the staff thought it was one thing, half the staff thought the other. They constantly undermined each other. There was petty infighting politics. That was a $5 million organization. I estimate that they lost $1 million a year in inefficiencies because they didn't have a clear vision. So came to a head, leave that organization, and end up in a situation where I am a new dad. I have a 2-month-old, and now I have no income. So I'm sitting on the couch and kind of processing all this, and my partner comes up to me and she's like, "Hey, what do you want to do? Have you thought about what you want to do?" I'm like, "I don't know. What do I want to do? What do I want to do? I have a 2-month-old and a family. What I want to do is irrelevant. What I need to do is now." And but she's like, "What do you want to do?" So I was like, "Well, I would really like to help people start nonprofits. Really help new nonprofits get started right." And she's like, "Why don't you try that?" And so we came up with a plan, which was we had 140 days, or we were going to be on public assistance. That was it. I had 140 days to make the business work.
Okay.
And I made a list of everyone I knew and put their name, put their phone number, their email, and what my default when I'm in trouble is, how do I help people? Who can I help? And I called every single person on that list. I didn't get very far down the list. I got maybe 20 or 30 names down. And each conversation was, "Hey, this is, I'm not working here anymore. I'm now free. This is my skill set. Who do you know?" And within 30 days, we had secured enough contracts to pay the bills for the business. So marketing, packaging. Oh, the only reason it was within 30 days is because I spent a week. What's the name of the organization? And what are my brand colors? And what should I put on my website? And none of it mattered. Literally none of it. Could have named it Bobby's Buckets of Chum, and made just as much money off of it. Now, obviously, later on, it helps to have this marketing of next level nonprofits and the kind of organizations, but could have named it whatever I wanted. I wasted so much time on the packaging and the creating and this and that. The smartest thing I ever did was, as scared as I was literally shaking, just called up the people that I knew and said, "I'm available now. What do you got?" And out of that, learned what my first product ended up being, which sustained the business for the first several months, which ended up being filing nonprofit paperwork, which was crazy because I'm not a lawyer, but I know how to do it. So that is what I would just advise. And I gave this advice actually to someone. I'm really proud of this. I gave this advice to somebody recently. They were starting their company, and they messaged me later and they're like, "Yeah, I'm all set. I got the income that I need coming in."
Wow.
And I'm just like, "Yeah, that's how you do it." So that's my advice to anybody who's thinking about packaging and marketing. If you're currently trying to pay the bills and not expand, if that's where your money's at, F that. I don't know if I can say the word, but F that. Just go make a list of who you know, tell them you're available and you're excited to help, and see who they refer you to, and man, you'll be covered.
Yeah. Okay. So reach out to people you already know, because you'd be surprised how many connections they already have. That's such a good way of thinking about it, and it goes back to again what we were mentioning before about having a group of people around you that can help you. Because not necessarily, we're not. I doubt your entire phone book was full of business partners. It would have just been normal people. But of course, if you reach out to people, they might know someone who's struggling in the same space. They might know someone who's struggling in the same space. Um, People are what draw people in, and that's kind of exactly what you did, and you put it into process. And it's good to see that you helped someone else and they actually applied the same kind of scheme and it worked out for them, so it clearly works. And I think there's also an element of fun in that, right? Because you don't feel too lonely then, because if you were there, you've got 140 days left, right? Not only is that feeling like an impending ticking time bomb falling down every single day, but then also if you don't talk to people about it, then it just feels like you're on your own. You're sitting there in that first week like, oh, what brand color should I do? What name should it be? What should the logo be? Because you're thinking this is a lonely fight. This is me on my own in my room. Let me just spend hours, make something, and maybe I'll do some cold calling or cold messaging at the end of it, right? But if you speak to people about it, get your name out there, your skills out there, then suddenly you have people out there which are trying to help you, and I think it makes it more fun, right?
Oh, it does. It does. I've never done well building anything without a community around me. If you're in the position where you're like, but Dan, I don't know anybody. Everybody knows up to 150 people. So if you know 5 people, you have connections to more and more. And as long as you treat each of those connections well, like this is how I go into a nonprofit that I don't know and raise money for them. For an issue I don't know, a nonprofit I don't know, people I don't know. I just did this recently. I raised them 30 grand. Why? Because I networked. I used their existing spiderweb of connections and built them out and found, oh, wow, this person wants to help and this person wants to help and this person, oh, look, there's money and there's this and there's that. So like, I don't believe you when you say you don't know anybody. But if you really don't know anybody, that's what you should prioritize. Get onlineable, go to meetings, whatever, go meet people, go learn about them, learn about who they are, see if there's a way that you can help them. And if there's a way that you can help them, especially in the for-profit space, it's just assumed they're going to pay you for this. So figure out the way that you can help them and then make them an offer and do that over and over. And you know what? If you offer low, you offer low. I offered so low for my first few clients, like utterly ridiculous looking back on it, the amount of work that I put in. But you know what? I learned a lot. I got a win. And imagine if I had offered what the price actually was. Now I don't get a win.
Yeah.
And now I don't have anything under my belt and I have nothing to show for it. But I was able to get those. I was able to get those wins. If you don't know anybody, that's your number one priority is go freaking meet people. If you do know people, then your number one priority is go freaking call them and see what they need and what you can provide. You do that, you'll cover your bills as a company, and then you can think about marketing and branding and mission and purpose and all of these amazing things that come in once you're at a point where those are covered and you can think strategically and you can do that. But if you're at that point, just do it. Just do it. Get out there, talk to people, do really, really good work so they want to refer you, and you'll be able to build something out of that.
Well, and that was kind of mirrored by someone else on the podcast a couple of months ago, where they said, if you really don't know anyone, which is rare in the first place, but it's possible sometimes, go to these meetings. And one thing that's evidently true in these, networking meetings is everyone's got their guards up a little bit. And the reason for that is because everyone's just expecting an elevator pitch. Like you shake hands with someone, they're just waiting for you to go, hi, my name's Krishna and I run a podcast, right? So one way that someone told me you can kind of break through that is just don't even do the elevator pitch. Just talk to them about what they do. So, if you know you're in there for about, let's say 2 minutes, right? You're having a conversation. Spend a good 1 minute just talking about them. Don't even talk, or just say, my name is Krish and I want to know more about you, right? Initially, someone's going to be taken aback. They're like, is that this guy not going to pitch to me? Is he not going to advertise? But the other thing this does is, if you've spent so long talking to someone about what they're doing, it would be rude for them to not then ask, okay, what are you doing, right? It would be, I think, humanely inhumane for them to just go, all right, thank you for that. That was a great conversation. Because it just wasn't a conversation. It was just one-sided. And then as soon as they ask, what are you doing? Two things happen. You already know what that person's doing, so you can pitch what you're doing in a way that can help them straight away. And B, they asked you the question, so you've already got someone who's interested in you rather than they will kind of repel you from the get-go, right? And then because you've pitched your proposal in a way that could help them, because you now understand a bit more what they're doing, they're way more likely to be like, that's interesting, and you're more likely to get those contact details. So it's these little things that you can do to kind of, even these, almost like battle zones of network meetings where people want to pitch and just continuously shout about themselves. You can still make those really warm connections. And as you said yourself, as soon as you've got one connection, that can open up to a whole new world of links that you can use for your business or just for your own growth in general, right?
Well, and I can add on to that, use this to great extent at conferences. I found that my success networking at a conference was entirely dependent on whether I was thinking about the other person first or whether I was thinking about my own organization first. And what I found was hilarious is, and you'll find this if you do online or in-person networking. If the entire conversation, for lack of time, ends up being about them, they will schedule with you to learn more about you. Like, it's okay. And I tell this to nonprofit leaders too. It's totally okay if you do a donor meeting and your first initial conversation, like if you're at the second or third meeting, you better start talking about what you do or nothing's ever going to happen. But in your first initial conversation, if you're just getting to know them and seeing if they're interested in what you do, if 95% of that meeting is about them and the other 5% is scheduling the next meeting, congratulations. You're basically going to get funded. Like, that is totally okay, because the number one topic people like to talk about is themselves. And frankly, you don't know enough about the people you're talking to know you can help them until they tell you. And the more information you have, the more of an idea you have that you can help them. So I absolutely double on that. That is a key to this kind of work, is you have to know what they're up to. You have to know what they're going on. You have to care about them as people. And then you can see how business relationships can be made.
Exactly. Well, I mean, in this entire conversation, Dan, it's been clearly about how much you like to just help people and almost try to solve really personal missions, right? Everything, even in business, someone could argue there's always like a backstory to it, right? Because ultimately, non-profits and business and just being an entrepreneur in general, it can be a little bit lonely. You can feel a little bit different. And it does require a certain element of grit, okay? And definitely I can see how if you're a non-profit, if your mission's not aligned, or like you said right at the beginning, if your mission's not precise enough and you try to do everything all at once, and then it kind of buckles in on itself, because let's say people, you try to invest to someone and then they kind of see that this person isn't really focused. They've just kind of given me a pile of problems and they're just trying to solve everything somehow. You could spend so much hours on that meeting and then you come back and you don't get the investment. It can feel like the world's caving in. It can feel like, no one's there with me. No one wants to help me out on this problem. And so it's good that we've got people like you who, first of all, understand and are passionate about what a non-profit is and why it's important in the world of for-profit companies, why non-profit also has its very evident place. And then also how they can be helped to rise sustainably via these kind of small things you said about spend 2 minutes on something if you're trying to build it into a habit. Spend 5 minutes on something if you're trying to just get into it rather than not do it at all. Also about make that impact pitch, make that impact project. The one thing that you can start doing, have a £15,000, top limit on the budget. Something that you can show to an investor or just show to yourself, if you need that kind of self-esteem, that what I'm doing does work. And like you said yourself, it doesn't need to help 100, 200, 300 people. Even if you helped 15 people, even if you helped 2 people, those people, if you did your job properly, those people will give you really good reviews and testimonials and feedback as well on kind of why they really enjoyed what you did for them, but then also how you could improve for more and more people. And on top of that, those people will probably be able to bring more people from their network, because if you did a good job for them, they'll want you to do a good job for other people that they know. So it's all the kind of this repeating loop of just put the work in, put the action in, and the money will flow from the investors, the clients will flow from the people you've already helped, and the good testimonials will flow as well if you've done a good job. It all stems from putting the work in.
Absolutely. Get out there. You have permission to try. Like if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, well, I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about that. You have my permission to try. Just go out there and try it and let it suck and have an idea of what you want to learn from it and try it. And you know what? It'll suck. And then you're going to look at that and you're going to be like, wow, that really sucked. I wonder if it sucked because of this. And you're going to try something else. And that's going to suck too. And you're going to be like, that really sucked. I wonder if it sucked because of this. And you do that over and over again and you learn quickly. And if you have, my last piece of advice is if you have the capacity to do it, hire a coach. Find someone who is in your industry specifically, not just any marketing coach, any business coach. Find someone who's in your industry. Find someone who has, because each business is very, very different. Find someone who has a track record. Talk to them and ask them the questions that you would like to ask a coach and see if they're a good match for you. But I'll tell you, the smartest decision that I made last year was hiring a business coach. Unquestionably, not even close. I vetted them well, and I picked one that I thought matched what I needed most. And that was the best decision that I made because that person has done oh, wow, that sucked. I wonder if it's this. Oh, wow, that sucked. I wonder if it's this 1,000 times already. And they can package it into something that you can learn from. So, if you have the resources, if you're in the nonprofit space, check out nextlevelnonprofits.us. Talk to me. We do a quick call and see if I'm a good fit for you or not. And then we can talk a little bit more. But if you're in the for-profit space, find a business coach, find someone who knows this area. Even if you just start following them online, really start to learn from people who have done oh crap, that doesn't work 1,000 times in your industry and can give you what does work in 10 minutes and then just follow it. Follow it to the T. Don't try to make up your own, spin on it. Follow it exactly as they give it to you. And you now just saved 1,000 cycles of, oh, wow, that didn't work, and got yourself to move forward much faster than you would otherwise.
Yeah, amazing. And as a final question, where do you want to take this now? So where you are right now, what kind of ideas do you have so you can help more and more people?
My ultimate vision is for nonprofits to be taken seriously. Okay. That is, at the end of the day, that is my goal. And nonprofits aren't taken seriously because they're not vision driven. They don't have solid teams and they don't track their impact. If you're not vision driven, you don't have a solid team, you don't track their impact, then you're a cute little charity and your passion project, if you will. And people will give a little bit to a passion project, but they won't really respect it, and they won't give the kind of money that respect gains you. And my mission is to see nonprofits get taken seriously. So, where we go from here is I think we're going to add more nonprofits to the space, learn more about how to really quickly spin up nonprofits, but really starting to focus in on organizations who have raised a little bit of dollars from donations, have made some money, and really just need their nonprofit to start being taken seriously, whether that's by donors or whether that's by the community, whether that's by volunteers. Like, your nonprofit is doing serious work and needs to be taken seriously. We are really going to start focusing on getting you there as an organization. So lots of cool stuff in the works. A book coming out, so I can't say what it is yet, but maybe invite me back. And but we're really excited to put as many of these nonprofits into the space and really start getting people to see what we talked about on this podcast, the impact of nonprofits, why people would actually start one, and why they're needed. And that's what we're focused on.
Amazing. So focusing on people who've already kind of done a little bit of the groundwork, but just need that final little push to make them almost realize their own potential, and try and help them help others, I suppose.
All throughout this, the last two nonprofits we did that for, they 5x'd their income in 365 days.
Well, there you
5x, not 2x, not 1x, not 3x. I was blown away by the number myself. 5x their income in under a year. We want to do that for as many nonprofits that are serious about what they do as possible.
Well, amazing. Congratulations on that achievement from your end as well. And I'm sure the more and more people you can do this with, it'll just change the kind of the view that people have about non-profits. Even from an investor point of view, if they can see that suddenly they're, if they've got a good aim, if they've got a solid, precise kind of mission, and they can follow through on it because they have that education, that assistance, that guidance, then people are more likely to just get involved and either reach out for help, but then also give the money that is needed, obviously, to run these services. So, Dan, thank you so much for coming on to the Starting Story podcast. It does mean a lot. And you shared such a good and almost a thorough understanding of what it means to be a non-profit and why they're important. Because, as I said, until this conversation, I did not really have the time to delve into what a non-profit is, but then why is it still important in the time when obviously for-profit seems to be the obvious better option if you're going to make money, right? But you were able to describe it so eloquently about why both of them have their position in creating something, but then also making sure people who need help get it. And yeah, that kind of just, clarified it all for me. And I understand now why nonprofits are such a big thing, why people start them, and why people eventually fund them, because they're doing such, big work for the world. So again, thanks so much for coming on, sharing your ideas, and congratulations on the book. Is this a bit of a mystery you left me on right at the end? This book, who knows what it's going to be about? But yeah, again, when the book comes out, do be in touch, and I'd love to have you on again to talk about, what's it about, how you feel like that's going to change people's perception, and how that's going to ultimately help people.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you to your audience for listening into the episode.